That is when you can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, on discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire, right? When looking at it from the point of view of helping solve and overcome their challenges, when helping to move them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. And just as importantly, they want to tell the world about you. They want to be what John David Mann, my awesome co-author, and I call being your personal walking ambassadors. And that's a powerful way to scale.
Bob, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Absolutely delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
Oh, delighted to be with you. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Despite the storms in this end of the world, we made it, which is great.
Absolutely.
We've been chatting off air. You know, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So, Bob, what does scaling with purpose mean to you?
Well, I think it's really, growing while you're still able to provide immense value to others. It's simply taking the immense value that you're giving and bringing it to more people. I mean, it's as simple as that, though not always easy. And that's why there's people like you who show us all how to do it.
You're very kind. More like you, I would say. And speaking of bringing immense value, I have received immense value from your wonderful Go Giver series books. For those who are listening, you won't be able to see this, but there's a wonderful little book called The Go Giver, a little story about a powerful business idea, and another wonderful book which I devoured recently, The Go Giver Leaders. So what I'd love to do today, Bob, is a little mini masterclass on the Go Giver, and if we've time, we'll get into the other ones. So, for those that are hearing this concept, this term, the Go Giver, for the very, very first time, what does it mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really, it's simply this: it's understanding that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins. Shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for some way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical type of reasons. Not at all. It's actually very logical. It's very rational. And that is when you can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, on discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire, right? When looking at it from the point of view of helping solve and overcome their challenges, when helping to move them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. And just as importantly, they want to tell the world about you. They want to be what John David Mann, my awesome co-author, and I call being your personal walking ambassadors. And that's a powerful way to scale.
I agree. And the more personal walking ambassadors that we can surround ourselves with as a result of delivering immense value on the scaling journey, ultimately, it compounds over time. It's like a snowball, the more we will gather. Yeah. You talk about the law of value as part of the 5 laws of stratospheric success within the book. Can you share with our listeners what those laws are? And then we'll do a deeper dive into the applicability of those laws in the context of their scaling journey.
Sure. So the 5 laws themselves are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. The first one, the law of value, says your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Now, this sounds counterintuitive when you first hear this. Give more in value than I take in payment. That sounds like a recipe for bankruptcy, right? So we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar amount. Well, in the U.S. dollar amount, a euro amount, a pound amount, a peso amount, whatever currency it happens to be. I know you are international, so what monetary system would you like?
Dollars good, Bob.
Okay.
A lot of US listeners.
Okay, so right, and I thought so. So I just want to make sure. So price is a dollar amount, right? It's a dollar figure. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another person that they will willingly exchange their money for this and be ecstatic that they did, while you also make a very healthy profit. A very simple example I like to use is, let's say one of the people you're coaching is they have an accounting business. Right now, it's a small accounting business, but it's going to scale, right? But right now, they hire someone, hires them to be their accountant, right? So what? And they charge a fee, let's say a price or fee, $1,000. That's their fee, their price, $1,000 to do this. But what value are they giving this person for this? Okay, well, first they through their experience, their energy, their hard work, their desire to get to know this person and their business, they're able to save this person $5,000 in taxes. They save this person countless hours of time, and they provide this person and their family with the security and peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So our accountant, she has given well over $5,000 in value or use value in exchange for $1,000 fee. The client feels great about it, right? And she makes a very healthy profit because it's well worth it for her to trade, exchange her time, her energy, her knowledge, her wisdom, her what have you, for this $1,000 fee or price. She gave more in value than she took in payment. Everyone comes away a winner. In fact, in any free market-based exchange, free market simply meaning no one's forced to do business with anyone else, there should always be two profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. But here's the key. This happened not because she was focused on the fee. She was focused on the immense value she was providing her client. The fee was the result, the reward, if you will. This is why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means really nothing more than that the value that you provide must be the focus, right? The fee, the money you receive, is simply a natural result of the value you've provided. That's basically the law of value.
That's so powerful, Bob. I just before we move into the remaining four laws, I want to pick up on something. I love that money is the echo of value. I always aim in these conversations to make them super practical for our listeners. For those who have become consumed in their scaling journey, and let's say what initially was a value exchange has now become somewhat transactional, what would you recommend, staying on the accountant theme, for them to do to audit, let's say, the value that they're giving, and to ensure that they kind of reset or rebase, get back to a point where actually they are focused on delivering value as opposed to actually slipping into that kind of transactional exchange?
Okay, so first, and I love that, because now that means we're going to go a little deeper into value. Okay, because what we covered was sort of a surface element of that, or aspect of that. So now let's first understand that there are two basic types of value. There's intrinsic value and extrinsic value. Intrinsic value is simply the value that a product or a service delivers just by the nature of the thing itself. In other words, any accountant should be able to save their client money, should be able to save them time, should be able to provide them with peace of mind. That's what an accountant does. Okay. A real estate salesperson helps the lister, the seller, sell their home at a higher price, less time, less aggravation. They handle the staging and the open houses and the advertising and there's certain things that they just do. They all do it. Okay. There's nothing that distinguishes them in that way. Now, as you know, if that's all you do, the same thing that basically everybody does, And the client, the potential customer or client, cannot distinguish between any two or more products, services, salespeople, what have you. It's always going to come down to what? The lowest price. And unless your last name is Walmart, right, or Amazon.com, trying to make low price your unique selling proposition is there's nothing unique. It's not selling, and there's no proposition. It does nothing for you. In fact, we would say that when you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource. This is where extrinsic value comes into play. This is the value over and above the product or service itself. This is what distinguishes you because they're buying from you before they're buying your product or service and before they're buying from your company. They're buying from you. So how do you, well, first, you've got to become that additional value. You are the additional value. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, here's the good news. There are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value. But they tend to come down to 5, what John and I call elements of value. Okay. And these elements of value, so these are not the 5 laws we were talking about. This is just within the law of value. The 5 elements of value, this extrinsic value, is our excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And while we could go into detail on those, let's just say this, that to the degree that you and your team could communicate those 5 elements of value at every single touch point, from the time you first meet that person, whether it's inbound on the internet, inbound call, outbound call, social media, meeting them in person at an event, from the moment you meet them through the relationship building process, the follow-up, the follow-through, the sales process, the referral process, the entire scaling process, to the degree that you can communicate one or more, hopefully all 5 of those elements of value at every touch point, that's the degree you take both the competition and price out of the issue. That's how you go from transactional to relational.
Yes, again, so powerful, and it speaks loudly to the 7th principle within our ScaleX 10 principle framework of proposition. And ultimately, we say, you should be solving a problem or serving a need. And what I'm hearing, if you're not the cheapest in the marketplace, at this part of the world, we can look at companies like Ryanair, who market themselves as the cheapest in the marketplace. If you're not, then it's incumbent on you as the leader of the organization to understand why a customer is willing to pay more for what you do in the context of the value that you provide. And those elements are a great signpost for people to really map the additional value that they can give, because it's so critically important that they're able to articulate that. So moving on to the other 4 laws then of stratospheric success in the context of being an exemplar go-giver.
Yeah, so the next one, law number 2, is the law of compensation. This one says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. This is where scalability comes into play, because where law number 1 talks about giving more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. In the story, because the Go-Giver is a parable, in the story, Nicole Martin tells Joe, the protege, that the law of value represents your potential income, but it's not enough to just serve one person or a few people, no matter how well you do it. Law number 2, the law of compensation, this is what represents your actual income, because it's all about how many lives you impact. How many lives you impact. Now, to do that, we need to scale, and one of the ways we talk about is through a referral-based business. And one reason we love that is because working with referred prospects provides a number of very unique advantages in terms of scalability. One, it's simply easier to set the appointment with a referred prospect, right? Because you're going in on borrowed influence. So it's a lot quicker. You're going, what we say, right over the rainbow, right to that pot of gold, instead of where everybody else is having to do the grunt work that gets in. Grunt work, there's a time and place for it. You've got to do it. But you want to get to the point where you're getting more and more recommendations and referrals, so that you don't have to do that part, right? So you can see more people. more qualified people. Second benefit is that with a referred prospect, price is less of an issue. That doesn't mean it's a non-issue. You've still got to communicate value, but it's less of an issue. Why? Again, borrowed influence, borrowed trust. You go in with some gravitas already because you were referred by this person. Now, the third benefit is it's simply easier to complete the sale. Why? Well, this is truly through borrowed trust, or what we call vicarious experience. So no, this person's never done business with you before themselves, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, this is the only person you need to deal with. This person will take great care of you. They have your well-being at heart. Their product or service is great. They stand behind it. The company's fantastic, right? And that's and then the fourth benefit is that with referred prospects, they're already of the mindset that that's how you do business because that's how they met you. So in their world, they see you as a professional salesperson or entrepreneur, business owner who meets people through referral, sells on high value rather than low price, completes the sale, the transaction, the sale, and is then referred to others. So that's basically law number 2 in a nutshell.
Yeah, again, I love that concept, and I've never heard that before. Essentially what I'm hearing is, and you're compelling the listeners to leverage their network to borrow influence.
Exactly.
And again, that's so powerful, and probably the quickest and easiest way for you to win new customers, and for you to ultimately widen the reach of your customer base to take your wonderful product or service to a wider audience. Again, we're very, very aligned on that. So law number 3.
Yeah, this is the law of influence. And the law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Now, again, this one sounds counterproductive at best, maybe even downright Pollyanna-ish at worst. Yet, you think about it. The greatest leaders you know, the top influencers, the most sustainably successful business builders, this is simply how they run their businesses. It's how they conduct their lives. They're always looking out for the other person's interests. Now, let me clarify and qualify this, if I may, Brendan. When we say place the other person's interests first, we do not mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It's simply understanding, as Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors, that all things, and we call this the golden rule of sales, golden rule of business, and that is all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus. Looking to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, advised Joe, make your win all about the other person's win, right?
Yeah, I love that. Again, we talk about being a star maker and not the star.
Exactly.
So coming to the 4th law.
So this one's the law of authenticity. And this one says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. Now, in this part of the story, Deborah shared a very important idea that she learned, fortunately, fairly early in her sales career. And that is that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are indeed all very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They also feel very comfortable with you, and they feel safe with you. Why? Because they know who they're getting. And it is an absolute powerful aspect of human nature that as human beings, we want to understand our world. This in a world that often is hard to understand. We want to make sense of our world in a world that often doesn't make sense. And we want things to be predictable in a world with little predictability. right? So when you're that person who shows up every day, they know who they're getting. Now, I want to just, if I may, share something that in terms of authenticity, which has become now such an overused word that it's almost lost its meaning. But I think it's also now, I think it also has sort of a false meaning in a certain sense. And let me explain if I may. Authenticity now, and this is especially, I think, in terms of social media, authenticity has now come to mean no boundaries. Just say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and selfie, this and that. You just because you're authentic. I disagree with that. I absolutely disagree with that. That would be like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot. And if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. And that's, I don't know, is there a word in Ireland, the malarkey?
There is indeed. Yeah.
Because my Irish American friends growing up used to say that an awful lot. Malarkey, Burg. That's malarkey, right? And so, of course, because all it means is this person has an authentic problem. Okay, and that they need to authentically work on in order to become a better, higher, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So we never want to use authenticity as an excuse for not growing, for not working on ourselves, for not improving ourselves. Hey, here's my definition of authenticity. Simple, but then again, I'm a simple guy. It's simply this. Authenticity is acting congruently with your values. So long as you do that, you're being authentic and you're on the right track as far as I'm concerned.
I love that you've called this out. It's probably the first time in 130 episodes that it's been called out in that way, because I feel that COVID has certainly taken the boundaries away, and we went from a place where we donned the business suit every day to actually conducting meetings in our shorts and flip-flops, which I still enjoy doing, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely.
And but somewhere in between, you've articulated that beautifully in terms of, well, does that mean I have permission to say whatever I wish to say? And I like that classification or that distinction between being, let's say, lacking a level of self-discipline and just being whatever version that you want to be, and not actually checking in on yourself in terms of the appropriateness. What I'd love to hear from you, Bob, because this is so important, and it speaks again to the very first principle of our 10 principle ScaleX framework, which is psyche. And I believe your self-image, your self-story, your self-discipline, your self-control is ultimately either empowering the other 9 principles or disempowering. What have you done over the years to actually reveal who Bob Burg is? Because we do literally go into the workplace, or certainly that has been the case pre-COVID. We've donned this, we've literally donned a suit and metaphorically donned a persona or put a mask on. And what you've called out is, authenticity lives somewhere in between. It's not stripping that all back and just kind of letting everybody see every single emotion that may arise, but there's a balance in between. What have you done in your desire to become more your true self, to actually find who Bob Burg is at your core?
Well, first, you bring up a great point in what you just said, and I think when you're saying about letting it all hang out and telling everybody that, I think authenticity can also sometimes be confused with the term transparency, and transparency's also become a buzzword. Be totally transparent. Let everybody see everything about you. Again, I'm going to go with now. Transparency, by the way, usually all things being equal, transparency is a great thing, but it's not always appropriate. And let me give you an example, if I may. Let's say you have a sales call to make. And actually, this is with one of your customers. And this is a customer who is not a warm, fuzzy type of person, right? They're not a real relationship person. They don't want to hear everything about you and your friend. And you wake up that morning and you slept wrong maybe, and you have a really bad neck. It's really hurting you. In fact, you don't even want to go to work today. You don't want to visit this person. You don't want to visit anyone, but you're a pro. and a high value of yours is showing up and doing what you need to be doing. Okay, and so you visit this person. Now, this is the type of person who, when you first meet them, what they want to say is at a meeting, they're going to say, "How are you?" and they expect you to just say, "Fine, how are you?" and then go on with the meeting. It's how they are. Okay, some people are like that, some people aren't. Now, here's the thing: they say, "How are you?" Now, if you're going to be totally transparent, you've got to say, "Oh, man, I slept wrong last night. My neck is killing me. You know what? I am in pain. I don't even want to be here talking to you." That's transparency. That would not be authenticity, because your highest value in this case, right? Congruency with your values is meeting your customer where they're at. It's serving your customer in a way that they want to be served. So while it may be transparent to tell them all about your aches and pains, it would not be authentic, because it's not congruent with your values of how you work with your customers. Okay. Now, there are some customers that would be totally fine because that's who they are, but not with this person. Now, later, when you go to your chiropractor and he or she says, "How are you feeling?" Now you can go into the how, right? Okay, so that's a big difference, and so we need to make sure, again, that we don't confuse authenticity and transparency, that we do things in the proper place and time, and that we do that. So, in terms of how do we make sure we show up as ourselves, I think first it's a decision that we make. Okay, but second, we also have to know our value system. And this is key. What are the principles to which we live our lives? Different people have different values, and that's a great thing. It's individuality. But I think it starts there. Well, it starts with the decision, and then going through and understanding your value system and acting congruently and staying conscious of that. And when we find ourselves getting off track, boom, that we say, "Okay, where am I and what am I doing, and is this who I want to be?" Because who I want to be is how I'm going to act, right? I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, what I'm hearing here is that context is so critically important. Mm-hmm. Understand who it is you're talking with, exactly, and the context of that conversation, and then leveraging the laws in that context, being very intentional about how you show up. Understanding your values. Values is something we've touched on in the show in the past. Bob, how have you discerned your values? Because it's a word. This word values is kind of it's kind of thrown about, and I think there's an assumption that everyone listening, understands intimately what we mean by that. But practically, if somebody's listening to this and they go, "Yeah, I'm hearing this kind of word values again," what could they do practically and quickly to discern three of their values, let's say?
So let's go back to the definition of value that we were talking about. Okay, the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. Okay, well, our values are the relative worth or desirability of a thing, how we act, our character, to ourselves. Right? So for example, and while my values and most people's values, I don't think really change. Most times it's unconscious. We don't go through the process of really writing down what our values are and thinking about them. So for example, I have a word, a theme this year that I'm going with, that I'm holding as a very high value. I think it's always been a value of mine, but over the last 20 years, it's become even more of a value of mine, and a higher one. So for example, I would say my highest value is kindness and encouragement, and I kind of put them in the same thing. It's how I'm made. It's how I've learned. It's how I've kindness and encouragement is a huge value for me to be that way. But here's my word for the year, and that I'm really making keeping as a high value throughout, and that is the word truth. Now, not to be confused with honesty. Honesty is also a high value, but that's not what we're talking about here. When I talk about truth, I'm talking about accepting and embracing what is, even if it's inconvenient for me to do so. Okay. And one thing I've always noticed in my studies, I guess over the last 40 years of successful people, um, is that is that they tend to always hold truth as a very high value, because it's only when we first accept a truth, again, despite it not being what we wish it were, it's only when we accept a truth that we're able to work within that truth in order to to thrive. It sort of goes back to when air travel, when flight was invented, right? And the people working on it, the Wright brothers could have said, well, this thing called gravity is really inconvenient. I wish we didn't have it, because if we didn't have gravity, we could just fly, and we could, I could, well, that's not a truth, because gravity exists on Earth. That is a universal law of physical nature, gravity, right? So no, they didn't say, I'm going to ignore this thing and go off a cliff with a pair of wooden wings and see what I can do. No, what they did is they learned the laws of physics. They learned the laws of aerodynamics. They learned about resistance. They learned everything it took so that they could take that truth and not be stopped by it, but they could take that truth and work within it in order to succeed. It's the same when we work with human beings. We might want to think that people are, one of the things I say to people when I speak at sales conferences is, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money, you want the sale, or even because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so. Now, that taps into a truth of human nature. Dale Carnegie said it in his book in 1936, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And that is, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. Now, that might be an inconvenient truth for us, but we've got to understand that truth. Now, once we understand that this person is ultimately going to decide to buy from us based on their needs, wants, and desires, not on ours. Now, what we can do is not be stopped by that, but instead realize that to the degree we can make it about them, right? Place their interests first, law 3, right? To the degree that we can focus on the value we're providing them, law number 1, right? That's the degree to which we're going to increase the odds of the sale taking place.
Yeah, it's, again, that's so compelling. And what I compel our listeners to think about as well, where they're leading an organization, they may not be the founder of that organization, they may not be the owner of that organization, they may be reporting into someone else. I've heard in the past, when I was the CEO in a previous company, from people, employees, team members sitting in front of me, compelling me to think about a raise for them. Their articulation of why they should get the raise is that they've just got married and they've bought a new house.
Exactly.
And
I love that example. Yeah.
And whilst that's beautiful, you go, well, ultimately, the only reason this company exists is because we are delivering value to customers. And in order to continue to deliver value to more customers, we need people within the organization who deliver and contribute value in the context of delivering value to our customers. So I would compel and appeal to everyone listening who maybe thinks of the kind of the inconvenient truth of that is that, well, I've bought a new car, I've got a new house, I've just got married, I need more money, is if you're going to have a conversation with the leader in the organization, list out all of the ways in which you are delivering value in the context.
How it benefits them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So I love that. Coming on to, and this was a nice little segue into the law of receptivity.
Yeah. Law 5. Yeah. And this brings it all home, right? And this says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And this simply says that, you breathe out, you know what? Got to breathe in as well. It's not one or the other. It's both. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving. You breathe in, which is receiving. We know, Brandon, that the world around us has given us so many negative anti-prosperity messages. We get them all the time. and it plays on people's heads. It gets into their conscious, worse, it gets into their unconscious, and they grow up with and they operate with a negative feeling about money and abundance and prosperity and business, and it can really mess things up. What we've got to know is that giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. They're simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. The key is to focus on the giving, of course. You've got to allow the receiving.
Yeah.
Allow the receiving.
Beautiful.
And yeah.
You've spoken to something there in terms of limiting beliefs, the beliefs, the negative beliefs that we are conditioned to believe as a result of, you know, our upbringing, our parenting, our schooling, the environment that we operated within, that we played within, that we grew up within. What are some of the limiting beliefs in the context of applying these laws that we need to be aware of, that we need to kind of call out?
Oh, well, look at everything you see in the movies. My friend Randy Gage, a great prosperity authority, talks about, and he does a wonderful vignette on this, but that if you ever watch a movie, a big selling movie, there are typically two types of characters that are portrayed. There are the good people who are generally poor, struggling, honest, right? Always fighting paycheck to paycheck. And then there's the other type of the person in the film. And that is the evil rich person who is mean and cowardly and nasty and has no soul. And you see this all the time. You see this all the time. He points out in the first Spider-Man movie many years ago, there was this amazing scene where Peter Parker is sitting with his Uncle Ben, and they're talking about, you know, being poor. And Uncle Ben says, well, Peter, we may be poor, but at least we're honest. What a horrible thing for some 13 or 14-year-old boy or girl to be watching and taking in unconsciously the message that says, if you're honest, you're in trouble, pal. You're not getting anything in life. You know, you're right. If you're honest, you're going to be poor and struggling. And if you make money, you must have been dishonest. You must have done something to someone. You must have taken advantage of people. Well, but isn't that just a movie? No, it's, first of all, it's pretty much every movie, but it's also pretty much every television show. It's pretty much what you see on social media. It's what they teach in many schools. It's everywhere you see this. Okay, so you know, one of my suggestions is to make a study of prosperity. You know, listen to, read, watch the people like Randy Gage, like Ellen Rogan, like Sharon Lecter, like the late Bob Proctor, David Nagel, Ken Honda of Japan. These are people, and there's many others, and I apologize for leaving many of them out. But you know, you look them up, you read their blogs, you watch their videos, you study, because the anti-prosperity garbage is coming in from everywhere. Right, it just gets taken in. So we need to proactively go out there and bring the good information into our heads and into our hearts.
I'm so glad you called that out. I'm pleased that I poked at that a little bit more. We've had the wonderful Sharon Lecter on the show in the past. What an incredible lady! What an incredible lady! So you're in very good company there. I love that concept, that appeal to people of, you know, to study prosperous people. I'm a big believer in success leaves clues, and the message here is that the paradigm that we have been conditioned to believe is that that ultimately the money and becoming rich is associated in some way with being dishonest and lacking integrity. We want, you know, it's critically important that from a subconscious perspective, to become aware of that, because ultimately that might be your thermostat, and that might be ultimately why you're struggling to succeed and stuck in a certain way. Bob, I want to be respectful of your time. Do we have a couple of minutes just to call out the wonderful tenets of the go-giver leader? You mention in Ben's manifesto 5 keys to legendary leadership. And I just love to tease the listeners with this. Maybe we get you back on in the future and we can do a deeper dive in these. But because again, so critically important in the context of leaders, and we have an audience of leaders. So could you just could you capture those in a few minutes before we move into the close?
I would summarize it like this. It's all about making it about those you lead. And, there was a great book written years ago by Jim Collins, Good to Great. And in it, he talked about the difference between level 4 leaders and level 5 leaders. The interesting thing is level 4 and 5 leaders both were just as talented, right? They both had the same intelligence, set of skills, the same, and they had successful companies. But with the level 4 leader, it tended to not be as sustainable, especially once they left, because it was all about them. They took the credit. They got the glory. The level 5 leader, it was all about the company. It was all about those they led. They took the blame. They gave away the credit. They empowered those leaders to learn how to lead. They made it not about themselves. They made it about others. Again, there's nothing self-sacrificial about this. This is how it's done the right way by the best leaders, the Bob Chapmans of the world, and so many who just do such a wonderful, wonderful job. So go-giver leadership is all about the focus being on those you lead.
Yeah, we had Bob on the show a number of months back as well. Wrote a wonderful book called Truly Human Leadership, and his entire premise is to serve those people that you have the privilege of serving. Treat them as if they're your son or daughter or brother or sister. Exactly. And so again, it's I'm smiling here because it's wonderful to have that message reinforced. And I was going to push you on an exemplar. You've already called it out, Bob. We have a closing tradition. You have and continue to live an incredibly rich life. You have the benefit of coaching and influencing people from business, from sports, from politics. Can you share with our listeners 3 timeless takeaways?
Well, I think the 3 timeless takeaways would be: first, live in truth. Make it about really grasping what is, not being stopped by what is, but embracing it so that you can work within it. I think that's so important. Number 2 is really learn people skills. We talk about that in the 3rd book in the series, The Go-Giver Influencer. It's all about how to master people skills. I believe people skills is the difference maker between those who are relatively successful and those who are absolutely stratospherically successful. People skills, so important. And 3, always look to add value to others, understanding that value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's never about what we think is of value or what they should think is of value. It's what they believe is of value. It's our job to discover that through our questions, our ability to listen, right? And our ability to truly care on a human level.
Well, you've certainly delivered immense value today, Bob. I want to thank you for your time and energy and wonderful wisdom. If people want to find out a little bit more about your work, where best to connect with you?
Yeah, the best place is Burg, BURG.com. And while they're there, they can subscribe to my daily impact emails that I send out Mondays through Fridays.
Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you today. I wish you every success with everything that you're involved with at the moment. You're continuing to make a huge impact on the world, and I appeal, a closing appeal to all of our listeners to go and grab a copy of the Go-Giver. And look, thanks again for your time, Bob. Take care.
Oh, Brendan, it has been a joy. Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful for you and for everything you're doing for so many. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.